Breaking news story, a federal judge out of Texas has ruled that DACA, the program that essentially allows immigrants who have been brought into the country illegally as children and remain undocumented, needs to end. He considers it illegal, and as a result, he will ban any new applications for potential DACA recipients. Now, as this ruling stands right now, it appears that the current DACA recipients will be allowed to remain, meaning that their permits to be in the United States will not be revoked. But who knows what the future entails in regard to this program. I do want to give you the reasoning from this judge, and his name is Judge Andrew Hanen. He was appointed by President George W. Bush, and he ruled that Congress had not granted the Department of Homeland Security the authority to create DACA, and that it prevented immigration officials from enforcing removal provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act. In fact, in his decision, he wrote, quote, "Congress has not granted the executive branch free rein to grant lawful presence outside the ambit of the statutory scheme." And he essentially says that Congress remains the only body that would provide a permanent solution for these dreamers, right? Again, these are undocumented immigrants who were brought into the United States as children, and DACA was really the only program that kind of protected them from getting deported. It was passed through an executive order by the Obama administration. Trump then comes in and tries to end the program, but the Supreme Court blocked him from deporting DACA recipients. And so now we have this situation going through the federal courts with a federal judge in Texas ruling that the program or the protection for dreamers is illegal.
We have a totally broken system, Adrian. I mean, we were supposed to protect these dreamers decades ago. We were supposed to pass a law so you didn't have to go through executive orders, et cetera. And in the beginning, the Republicans said, oh yeah, oh, we love Latinos, and yeah, of course, no problem, right? And then when it came to vote, they were like, oh no, we hate them. We were just kidding, that was just for elections. Of course we vote no, and we'll never let you pass it. And then you elect Trump. Of course he's not going to do it. He's going to do the opposite. He called all immigrants coming in from the southern border criminals and rapists. He says, I suppose there's some good ones. Wow, are you not merciful, right? So it looks like we can't do the simplest things, like just this basic human decency that, by the way, an overwhelming majority of the country agrees with. I've seen polling near 80% on this issue. But what do we do? What do we live in a democracy? So Adrian, as usual, the bad guys come out on top.
Yes, they do, unfortunately. And it does seem that, in creation of DACA, that the Obama administration was really trying to do something significant and also impactful that would just be good for the nation. And then having Biden also try to bolster that when he came into office. But the reality is, if in the event that this judge's ruling is accurate and Congress did not create that kind of wide authority of powers for the executive branch to go ahead and go through with it, then it will lie with Congress. And you know what, we've seen so much in terms of getting things through Congress that actually help and benefit the people. And so I don't know necessarily if they can help bolster DACA, but at the end of the day, in the event that Congress doesn't do something, it's gonna end up before the Supreme Court again. And I can't guarantee that it would survive another challenge, especially given that conservative swing that it really seems the court is leaning in that direction without fail, no exceptions.
To be honest, I have no idea how this right-wing Supreme Court would rule on this, because there's kind of something happening that threatens the economy that conservatives are panicking about, and that's the fact that for the first time in 2020, the US population actually went down, right? Of course, because of coronavirus, but also because people aren't having children, because why would you in this country that provides no social safety net and really gives you no incentives to have children? There's nothing to support people who want to have kids. So the birth rate is down. The population is actually declining in the United States. And from what I've been hearing from various conservative lawmakers and also on conservative podcasts, which yes, I do unfortunately force myself to listen to them, they're panicking about it, and they're like, what are we gonna do? We need, if you have an aging population, it's gonna hurt the economy. So there's that part of it. I don't know if that's gonna factor into the Supreme Court's decision. However, I do wanna bring something up in regard to this federal judge's decision, because I don't disagree with the reasoning here. But we have a system of government now that's so incredibly broken, right? Congress is supposed to pass legislation to protect DACA recipients. There should not be this unlimited amount of power in the executive branch where all these decisions get made by a stroke of the pen by the President of the United States. I think that's wrong. We're supposed to have a system of checks and balances. But Congress is useless. Congress is divided, it's useless, it's completely bought off by corporate interests. And so they don't ever do anything that's actually useful in the form of passing legislation to provide protections for people, including DACA recipients. So we end up in this awful situation where now the courts are striking down these executive orders that are important. It's really our last resort. But again, the reasoning or the rationale in this ruling is sound, in my opinion, right? But the problem is we have a broken system with an awful Congress that's never gonna do anything that's right in terms of immigration.
So lastly, let me just agree with both Adrian and Anna. So I think Adrian's legal analysis is correct. So if you can't do it this way, then you should do it regular order, which is, in America, you're supposed to pass laws, right? And so pass the goddamn law. And to agreeing with Anna, well, Democrats, I mean, Congress is useless overall, right? But Democrats, you now have control over all of the branches of government except the Supreme Court. So you got the presidency, you got the House and the Senate. If you don't pass any of these easy laws, these are bare minimum promises. Protect the dreamers, $15 minimum wage, For the People Act where you protect voting rights, and the infrastructure bill that you promised, right? If you don't pass these bare minimum, we're not talking about Medicare for all. We're not talking about other things that you promised as part of Biden's agenda. We're talking about just the easiest ones. If you don't pass one of those, let alone all of those, yeah, then the voters are going to correctly conclude that you are useless. And they're going to incorrectly try the Republicans again. And the Republicans don't want any of those things passed, and they support unpopular positions. But you put the voters in an impossible spot where they go, well, if I vote for you again, I know I'm gonna get nothing. So what's the point?
Right.
So Democrats either do something or give up as a party, let progressives take over, which would be infinitely better, because we're ready to do a lot of things on behalf of the American people.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.